I kind of want to talk a little bit about life on death row. Can you, this is kind of a broad question, but can you describe what life on death row was like, what the conditions were like?
When I first went to Mecklenburg, where death row was, they kept the death house and death row separate. I went to Mecklenburg. When I first arrived on death row, at that time, death row was all locked down. We stayed in our cells basically 23 hours a day. We had lawsuits were filed. Eventually, we became a general population inside of the prison itself. So we were allowed out of our cells from 8 o'clock in the morning till the 10 o'clock count, then out again until the 4 o'clock count, then in the evening from, say, after the 4 o'clock count to 11 o'clock at night. The units were small. Mecklenburg, we were all single celled. We had 2 units. 1 unit, but it was split in half, and you had 12 men on each side. You had 2 tiers of cells. You had 6 on the bottom, 6 on the top. We had our own washing machines, our own showers. There was a TV in the pod that you could watch. We had some tables. We could eat our meals out there. Play chess, play cards. So we had in our unit, which maybe about twice the size of this room, that's where we lived, that's where we played. To describe what it was like is mentally it's different because, and I talked to guys here about that, most of the guys on death row knew they were under sentence of death. They knew at some point they would probably be executed. They recognized the reality of that. But what the Department of Corrections tries to do, what the staff try to do, is distract you from that. They want to give you as much distraction as you can. And those guys, you want to be distracted. So most of the guys on the row couldn't tell you who their attorneys were. They couldn't tell you what the issues were in their case. They couldn't even tell you where they were at in the appeals process. But they could tell you every sports statistic. They could tell you everything that happened on every soap opera for the past 5 years. So that they knew they were on death row, but they didn't face the reality of it. It was something that was going to happen way down the road sometime. At the state penitentiary, the death house is in the basement of a building. You had 9 cells this way and 4 cells on the other wall. When you first come into that unit, when you step through the steel doors, there's an oak door. There's a refrigerator and some other stuff like that, but there's an oak door. That's where they walk you in to the death chamber. Now, on the other end of that, there's another oak door where they bring the body out, and there's a room. They call it the cool-off room, where they take the body either on a stretcher or put it on the table, put sandbags on it to keep it stretched out. So, because when you come out of the chair, you're pretty much in position. You're not flexible anymore. All your muscles are. That's where we had to visit. We would sit there and drink coffee and eat on a table where the body from the last execution was. You could still smell the stench in the air. I mean, it was there. The place, you couldn't get rid of it. The execution squad, they would take cotton and stick it in their noses and then take Vaseline and put it on top of that so they wouldn't have to smell it.
So I guess if you were to paint a picture, one last question about life on death row, like if you were to kind of paint a picture of like what you would hear, what you would see, what you would smell, like in that day room or from your cell, what would it be?
The sights and sounds of death row. On any given day, you would see guys, if you were to come in there, you would see two guys sitting at a table playing chess, drinking coffee. You might see a trash can with a homemade stinger in it, using electricity to heat water, and guys putting whole cans of Campbell soup in there and pulling them out and trying to make meals. You would hear music playing, guys taking showers, guys washing clothes, somebody talking on the telephone, guys milling around in the tier, just standing there talking. At one point, you would see the cell doors open, guys going out, in and out of each other's cells. I've got 3 tattoos. They were all done by Eddie Fitzgerald. He wanted to learn how to do tattoos. He actually made a electric tattoo gun out of the motor out of a cassette player. And I was the practice dummy. He got to practice on me. So, probably going to get executed anyway, so go ahead. Now I kind of regret it that I'm going to have to get these things off because this one's half done. And that's what you would see. But there were times at night you could hear guys talking to themselves. Sometimes you could hear guys crying. You got the whole gamut of emotions from people. Guys would get up in a bad mood, didn't want to be messed with. There were fights. Guys would get on each other's nerves. Sometimes there would be fights.
So, contrast that with the death house.
The death house, everything changes with the death house. The prison has a program set in place that once you move into the death house, it's about breaking you down. And the best way to learn about this is a professor at American University named Robert Johnson wrote a book called Death Work, a study of the modern execution process. Very short book, very powerful book. At the time that it was written, nobody knew that it was about Virginia. It wasn't supposed to come out. He never released it. He never told them. Virginia got mad because all of a sudden in the press this was about Virginia. You had to, no. He didn't violate the contract. I did. I wasn't part of it. He was made an honorary member of the death squad. They actually thought that the book would be favorable to them when it came out. And what came out of that story, of his experience with that was, and this happened in the death house while I was there. They have this psychological program in place where to keep you distracted and to psychologically break you down. So on the night that you're to be executed, everything is geared to breaking you down psychologically, so you docilely walk into the chair. They don't have to worry about you fighting. You just basically head shaven, stripped of your identity, and you docilely walk in like a lamb to slaughter. They strap you in and they execute you. This is all by design. And the best example I can give of that is my last trip into the death house. I had 24-hour access to the media. I had 24-hour access to my lawyers and Marie. I had visitors constantly in it, 24 hours a day. As I got closer to my date coming closer, all of a sudden they changed the rules. Marie couldn't come in. I didn't have 24-hour access to anything. They wanted me in handcuffs and shackles when I met with Marie or the lawyers. And we didn't know why. And we sued. Jerry Zirkin took them into the courtroom. And the Attorney General comes in to defend us, and he brings the warden in. And we're in front of Judge Marriage again, my favorite judge. He's a federal district court judge. He's been dead for several years now. But the warden's on the stand, and Jerry's asking him about why the change. Joe is no threat. And this guy has a graph chart. And he's explaining to the judge that, well, you know, when they first come in, reality hasn't sunk in. So, and we do this, we talk to them, we try to distract them. And by the time they get to the chair, they're completely docile. But he said, Joe doesn't think he's going to be executed. You know, so he's a threat. You know, he's subject to go out. He might take people hostage. He might hold his lawyers hostage or whatever. And he's explaining this process to the judge, and the judge stops me and says, so what you're saying is that Mr. Giarratano was too alive. And the warden said, yeah, that's a good way of explaining it. And he told him to leave the courtroom. He kicked him out of the courtroom. This is a judge whose grandparents were killed in Auschwitz. So when this warden's telling him, well, no, we don't have to shave their whole head. All we really have to do is just shave the crown and put the electrode on it. But we shaved the whole head. We learned that from the Nazis. You know, they shaved the Jews' heads to strip of their identity. He said, and that's what we're doing to these guys. And we compartmentalize it. We have a guard, this guard is the leg guard. He's trained. His only job is to strap the left leg in. This guard straps in the right leg. This guard straps in this arm, this guard. And that's all they're trained to do. They don't see the body, they just see an arm, a leg. This guy puts the electrode on their head. But he said, we want everything to go smoothly. We don't need anything to, so we have to break them down. We can't drug them. We can't do that. You know, we can't beat them into submission, but we have to kill them. And we have to do it in the way that's easiest for us. But yeah, they would test the chair. And the myth about the lights going, that's not true. Not maybe in the 30s or the 40s that happened. It's on a separate system. What you hear is a hum, because it's a lot of electricity coming through, and you hear this, and you're right there. You know what they're doing. And you're not supposed, they don't want you to know this, because they don't want the reality to sink in. We're part of that system, because when we stop somebody from being executed, when we get somebody like Earl exonerated, what the other side says is, see, the system worked. No, it didn't work. You know, we saved this guy, but the system's broken. It's really, really broken bad. And it's not a system that you can fix, because what you're doing is morally wrong. You can't take, just because you can't take something that's morally wrong and make it legally right. Yeah, you can make it legal, but it's never going to work. It's never going to be, you're always going to be at risk of executing the wrong person. People make mistakes. And it's not, you know, well, it's never been proven that we executed somebody who was innocent. Don't have to prove it. We know it's happened.